Now we're moving the conversation onto oil. Chris Fix arrived in Dubai this summer as the new chief executive of Dubai Mercantile Exchange. His job, put Dubai on the map as an oil trading hub to rival New York and London. Fix joins Dubai Merc at the critical time. Earlier this year it underwent a big restructuring, with America's Chicago Mercantile Exchange boosting its stake to 50%. It's also a time of rapid growth for the 5-year-old exchange, with trading of its main oil contract rising sharply this year. Fix joins Dubai Merc after decades as an oil trader, most recently in Singapore with the French bank BNP Paribas. He spoke with Dubai Eye's Richard Dean and began by explaining why the exchange has a new focus on Asia.
Well, the new focus is really primarily about mirroring the types of things that happened in the other benchmark areas. You know, specifically when you look at Houston around WTI and Brent around London, where you have ecosystems that develop. So we're trying to address all the parts of the ecosystem, as it were. So right here we've got the exchange, we have the producers, we're starting to see the finance build up. You've also got refiners, storage. You know, we talked about Fujairah and the Gulf Intelligence Summit, and those pieces need to be pulled together a little bit better, and we plan to be, if you will, a thought leader in that process.
You've moved here from Singapore, so you bring Asian experience. And perhaps Singapore is another model that Dubai can look to in terms of launching and developing an energy trading hub, an energy futures hub. What lessons can Dubai learn from Singapore? What experience can you bring from Singapore that can help?
Well, I think when you look at the growth of Singapore, you see various pieces coming together. It's a major financial center. And of course, here we have a lot of the major international players. Also a trading center, which is starting to develop here in Dubai, where you have the physical guys coming in. You also have the desks who are actually doing the broking and the actual trading. So I think that's mirroring Singapore to an extent. But also what the major advantage of Dubai is the proximity to the reserves. I think that when you see the physical aspect of the oil game, it's much more compelling to be in Dubai than Singapore, even though they've got a hub in terms of fuel oil and storage.
You've taken over DME's in almost a position of strength. It's 5 years old now. It's got some very strong shareholders, CME, but also some of the big trading houses as well. Even before you joined, volume's up about 50-60% so far this year. So it's doing a bunch of stuff right. If we look at what's happened so far and that 50% increase in trading so far this year, who is doing the trading on DME with the DME Oman contract, and why are they doing it?
Well, there's a range of players on the exchange. We have around 30 to 50 active participants month in, month out, and that's going across a span of national oil companies in terms of Southeast Asia and China. You also have large trading houses, which are the big Geneva-based players who are moving huge amounts of physical oil. You also now are seeing the growth of the refineries, which is a very exciting story for us because they recognize that most of their crude benchmark is against Middle Eastern sour crude, and they need to have a pricing benchmark that works very well for their inputs. Their exposure is against the oil coming out of the Middle East, not out of the North Sea or in Houston. So we're seeing a broadening, if you will, of that client pool, and we think that's going to be the key to growth.
So what are you going to do differently? A position of relative strength to build on, but you're going to do a bunch of stuff differently, I'm sure. What's your action plan?
The action plan is first to start to build a better mousetrap. I mean, we have to have a better basis on the exchange in terms of the technical fundamentals of the contract, which means more liquidity in the front 3 months, better bid-offer spreads, and good participation from the users. Traders in Singapore or London, they really want to see something that's a tight market, 2 or 3 ticks wide. And we're working very hard to engage those customers the old-fashioned way. I mean, we sit here all day, we call them up, we talk about the market, we show them where the strength is in the month 3, 4, and 5, and they're starting to really embrace that. And that's the first thing we need to do. The second thing is to position ourselves to be that thought leader in terms of developing this ecosystem, and that's continuing as well. We've had a chance to sit down with half a dozen Arab banks and discuss with them the prospects of financing oil through the exchange, and that broadens a bit our footprint, and we're going to continue with that as definitely going into 2013.
How big a focus are the national oil companies here in the Middle East? Since DME's inception, there's been a lot of talk of, well, if we get Saudi Aramco on board, if we get ADNOC on board, that could be a tipping point. Do you need them? And if so, what are you doing to go out and get them?
Well, I mean, for me, what I'm going to do is just build a better exchange. I think that those companies have a very good sense of what they're doing. They've been selling oil for a long time. And we, of course, welcome engagement with them. But that's not the primary focus of our business. The primary focus of our business is to engage our client base, is to build volume through the users, through the end users, through the consumers, and to make sure that they see a good value proposition in the DME versus the benchmarks in the West. And let me point out too that there's no holy grail. If it's happened 2 times where the Saudis have changed their pricing benchmark, and that hasn't been the boon that the contracts in ASCII or B-Wave thought it was going to be. So although I welcome the engagement as part of the community, as we discussed, it's not the silver bullet from our perspective.
There have been changes in the trading of energy futures over the past year. We've seen, really in the past few months almost, Brent as a benchmark leaping forward and overtaking WTI, the American benchmark. What's driving those changes and those factors? And how do you read the changing mentality among the oil trading community and how that might impact you?
Well, I think that what there is not currently in the market is a price formation and discovery mechanism for Asian and Eastern trade flows. So when you talk about Brent, it's a contract that suits very well the market in the northeastern Europe and northern Europe, and unfortunately they have achieved a degree of liquidity which is quite commendable, and people are switching and using that because it's the least of the worst options. But what we need to do is build our own, continue to build our own benchmark in terms of saying, listen, we capture better the dynamics of the Eastern market. And that's really the value proposition that we offer. And I think that our job is to continue communicating that and bringing that sort of relevance to the market.
There are some critics who say one of the issues that needs to be solved is that there are too many exchanges here in the UAE, whether it's commodity exchanges or stock exchanges or bond exchanges. There's just too many for a small town. Even in commodities, you've got yourselves and also the DGCX. Is that too many? Do we need to see some consolidation? Are these kind of strategic issues on your radar as the chief executive?
Well, for us, we're addressing a very sort of corporate or large-scale market, whereas our cousins in the DCGX are doing a great job in the retail space. And we think there's definitely parallels, and there's room for both of us. And they've really, done a good job for Dubai, and we welcome talking to them because, we see that there's value that they're bringing to the market in their segment. Our segment is quite different, however, and we have global distribution with the CME. We have very strong partners who have 7 different partner exchanges, not just DME, and a very global focus. And we've got distribution in terms of having the Globex platform and the new CME Direct, which is being developed right now, and we're going to be rolling that out in the coming weeks, which gives our customers the ability to trade a free portal into the DME, and that, of course, should break down many barriers in terms of not wanting to pay for those expensive trading systems.
Just what does the CME mean to you and your ambitions here at Dubai Merc? They now own a 50% stake in the organisation since the restructuring earlier on this year. Just explain to people driving home who perhaps aren't in the energy trading, energy futures industry, what that means and why it's significant and how it can help you.
Well, it's significant because basically I wouldn't have left a successful 20-year career at a very good investment bank at BNP Paribas if I didn't see the long-term prospects and the long-term strategy, which is 5-10-year strategy, which is what the DME brings. They have a global reach and a global approach, and they really are here for the long haul. And that's the very interesting part for me. And also they're going to lend their expertise in terms of all the other commodities they trade, giving us support with systems, the clearing engines that they have, which is first-rate technology. So all those pieces are very vital. Also, when you're looking at engaging the national oil companies, they want to know that you've got a very, very powerful sponsor in terms of financial liquidity, financial resources, and I think that the CME brings that to us, and I would not have made my change had they not been a part of it.
And it's interesting that you bring up the motives for your change. I wanted to ask you about that change. It strikes me that there's sort of 2 fundamental shifts that you personally are going through. One is going from being on the trading side to being a chief executive. That's a different skill set. And you've gone from working for an investment bank to working for the market itself, working for an exchange. Two big changes. What different skills does that require of someone, albeit someone with great experience like you, and how are you managing that transition?
Well, it's certainly a big step up. I really enjoyed my time at BNP, and I had a six-person team, and we were very successful, and we built a great business, especially in China. But when this opportunity came along, I saw it as a natural extension of my own career because I had been inside the financial institutions, knew what it was like from a clearing perspective. But, to go from 6 to 30 people was a great sort of step in a bigger direction. So in some ways, it's much bigger. You're the last person that everybody comes to get problems solved. And in other ways, it's still the same management perspective of managing through my managers to make sure that we're building a better prospect here. But also the move to Dubai was very interesting for me because I felt like after 7 years in Singapore, I had a very good view of the Asian market. But the Middle East is growing at a super rate. You look at there was a 12% GDP increase last quarter in Dubai. This place is really going in the right direction. And as a person in commodities, to get close to the actual sources and deal with the national oil companies and be in the Middle East is a great an enhancement to the career that I've had so far.
My final question is this. What does success look like for you? What goals have you set yourself?
Well, that's a great question because I just set them today. Just before you came in, I set the new goals for next year. And the first one is to develop a better value proposition for the shareholders and the stakeholders for the DME. And that comes in many forms. It's not just a number target in terms of liquidity. It's about gaining a bigger footprint in the region. It's about, being a thought leader. It's about dealing with looking at different aspects of the business and how they can be enhanced. As I mentioned before, when you see the history of Brent and you see the history of WTI, I want to recreate that history. And I think that as you can witness the growth in the Middle East, also in terms of the drive that's here and the talent that's coming, that this is a great place to be, and we want to feed off of that. And in a year's time, I'm sure we're going to have some notable successes to sit down and talk about.
Look forward to sitting down and talking about those with you. But for now, Chris Fix, it's great to have you in Dubai. Wish you the best of luck. Chief Executive of the DME. Thanks indeed.
Thank you very much.